Yes, it was very adventurous in 1971 with two such old cars and seven people who didn't really know each other to dare the journey to India, through Afghanistan, and then even to Nepal. People hardly knew each other. They met on the bulletin board in the university canteen. We experienced so many things and we set off unprepared, very carelessly and unreasonably, and very, very lucky. The cars, old delivery trucks from the German post, kept causing problems and almost deserted to us. So the cars were in a bad condition, but one of the car cost only 730 Deutschmarks. Nevertheless, we actually came to India. Then the group split up. One group drove directly towards Nepal in one car, the other through southern India. And in the end, everything went well. I would now like to tell you some details about this trip. Everything is based on my diary from back then, and now it will continue chronically. A highlight was meeting other travelers along the way, like this Volkswagen T1 van coming from Nepal. The exchange of experiences about everything important started immediately. Less highlight was, of course, when you were stressed like here in India, when the villagers besieged you, should we please make room for the tractor? But it was monsoon season and everything was covered in mud, so we could never avoided it. It must have taken an hour for the tractor to finally move on the side, and then we could press again. It wasn't always nice. Yes, look here, and that's me, Heinz Wippen, at the age of 20, on my way into the wide world. I'm from a small village of Hochstede in northwest Germany and haven't seen that much yet, but I wanted to go to India. I wasn't really a hippie, even it looks like it here. Actually, I was only interested in getting to know other countries, ways of life and cultures, and not in experiencing an expansion of consciousness or taking drugs. That wasn't really my thing. And, as we shall see, for the most part everything went well. So, our travel route went from Hochstede in the county of Bentheim via my place of study in Tübingen and then across the Alps and the Balkan to Istanbul. That was the first major station. Then through eastern Turkey along the Black Sea to Iran, which was then called Persia. We visited the Caspian Sea. Then came the entry to Afghanistan, where we took the paved road from Herat via Kandahar to Kabul. We entered Pakistan via the Khyber Pass. We crossed the country via Rawalpindi and Lahore, and then we came to Delhi in India. There the group split. From there I drove with some of the group with the car to Nepal. The second car took the South Indian tour and finally came also to Nepal by car. So we did our tour around 12,000 kilometers, and there we could sell the cars. I would like to point out my little book. It is my diary, what I wrote in German language, called Mit dem Auto nach Indien, 70er Jahre Hippietrail. There you can find all experiences which I had, a bit more detailed and much more than appears in this short video. You can order it by Amazon.de. Our first stop was, as I said, Istanbul. And what do you do first of all? You go to the pudding shop, the Lala restaurant. This was the replacement for the internet back then, because in this pudding shop all the information was passed, or new groups were formed. You heard nice things about long distance traveling, but also bad things that could happen. It was a big communication center. For me, Istanbul was probably even more special, because it was the first city of millions in my life, and I was amazed. I was a northern German country bumpkin. I did a lot of sightseeing in the huge bazaar. I visited the mosque, met many interesting young people, Turkish as well as travelers. But then we went from Istanbul. There was no bridge at that time, so we took the ferry over the Bosporus, going east. So far, it hadn't been a big problem with overnight stays. But now, the first night, we couldn't find a parking place. As soon as the car stopped, someone came knocking. Without being able to speak, he wanted us to see us as guests. He was the station master of a railway cottage, and we had a wonderful evening with flatbread, with sheep cheese, with raki, and after that we said goodbye and the next morning, and as if we have been the best friends. Such surprising hospitality should be a pleasure for us some more times. And from this place we went east through Anatolia. We drove over the slopes, over the mountain to the Black Sea. The Black Sea opened us beautiful bathing places. I also really enjoyed driving along there. But suddenly we got stuck, as you can see here on this photo, in the sandy beach. Many Turkish hands helped us to get the cars back on solid ground. It didn't take long until we really had to stop. A first car breakdown that was in the middle of the mountains of eastern Anatolia. Good luck, only one exhaust somehow had to be attached here. But the bad inside experience was that we left this girl here. We simply forgot our Daisy here suddenly. She was standing there alone, just like she was, without money, without clothes, without fitting, without everything, all alone in a remote eastern Turkey. And it took 3/4 of an hour to get her back into our car. A bad experience. She endured all sorts of fears and that everything could happen, she as a lonesome woman, but it went all well again. We also had many contacts when we stopped. When people were there, it wasn't always so pleasant, sometimes very intrusive. But then you had to get used to it. It would only get worse during the trip. Mostly pleasant contacts, sometimes unpleasant ones. Especially in eastern Turkey, that was said, there were children throwing with stones if you didn't stop and give them cigarettes. That's why our car was equipped with the bars in front of the window, but illogically only one car, I even don't know why. We've even been hit maybe 15 times, but never destroyed our windscreen. Then a real glitch happened. A huge problem should be repaired when the diesel hose burst between the injection pump and the engine. That was in the middle of nowhere, but nevertheless more and more people came, and one man said, "Let me do." He repaired as a precision mechanic with cycle tube and with a thin wire close to lash the inner tube. What a surprise! Our Mercedes diesel engine ran flawless. We could continue driving. Hui, breath deeply. Then we finally came to flat land in the far east of Turkey. We were lucky then when we came to a place where was irrigation. We could wash there, we could do the laundry, we probably even fetched our drinking water. But the diary doesn't say where we got all our water every day. And of course, we were always well observed. We were already exotic people in the country, and also the way we behaved, that was a bit exotic, that was even a bit borderline, and I don't think that we thought very much about that, whether our behavior was correct or respectful. Yeah, that has been me in front of the Mount Ararat, uplifting feeling to stand by this biblical mountain. Later we met 3 young people with a Ford Transit, and we're going together back to India. Travelers' day in Iran, shopping for the daily need, nice conversions with interesting people, while you don't speak their language. The track wasn't quite bad more. Asphalt is missing for long stretches. The cars had to drive over gravel roads, and that meant there was dust. Right down in the rucksack, in the nose, between the teeth, everything was full of dust. So the whole landscape looked yellow and brown. The life in this landscape was very, very basic and original. Of course, we were once again admired with our 3 cars, and then we met the people in a bit in excitement on our way. Sometimes there were nice places to sleep, if it was possible, outside. With the cars, a wagon complex was built. With all the things we had, it looks very adventurous and exotic. I mean, you see these pictures, you would say, anything is oh so nice. Or when you see how we then sit peacefully together as a group and have a picnic with things we bought and brought. But this is deceptive. You must know that the harmony in the group was no longer so great from Istanbul onwards. We were 7 individuals who did not know each other well. We were thrown together. In the group, we had 2 so-called alpha animals who often fought. It crackled a lot. And it's really no wonder when you're sitting in 2 small tin cans. There's hardly no space for yourself. There's the extreme heat and no intimate hygiene. It is amazing that the group even lasted all the weeks. At least that's what I have to add now, because there are no pictures of our stress in Tehran. We had to complete a lot of things in the city. For example, one group cared for some spare parts, but instead of that, they drove to the outdoor pool. When they came back, there was a dispute so loud and so fierce that even the local people on the road stopped and asked whether they can convey. That was so awkward, but the fury was so big that one car just drove away. That means we separated, and that was so stupid, because in one car were the groceries, and the other spare parts. And your own things were also in different cars. It was just stupid, but the effect was so great, and so we drove nevertheless away through the day. Also we realized what kind of nonsense it was. Hopefully we'll meet again in the next day or later, latest after 1,000 kilometers at the border of Afghanistan. So dumb. I drove in this car, and together we came with the Swiss friends, we came to the Caspian Sea. So immediately a crowd of people came together, so many nice but also different people, so friendly, and that's what it was here, so with a big hello and clapping endless joy. We drove away from these people to the street, where we hoped that our yellow car will be there again, but it wasn't. What could I say? One day later, surprise, surprise, suddenly the Mercedes postman appears at the picnic area. The others drove behind us and then caught up with us. How happy we were, how lucky we were. We hugged each other. What do we want to be nice to each other? Everything was forgotten, but it was not really forgotten. Then we drove with the 3 cars to Mashhad, the city in the east of Iran. We were warned before that Mashhad could be very devout and very unworldly. Our impressions were different. We met open-minded people. We put us into the impressive mosque. Sensationally, what you see, what kind of works of art has been worked into these walls. We visited the bazaar, of course. I bought small Persian carpets. I imagined it would be a good investment. Those 2 carpets, they didn't last long and probably weren't worth much. But so is it when tourists are naive. But we were lucky. We really found the diesel hose for our diesel engine, so we could finally repair it. We come to Afghanistan, in a country that is very original, very traditional, nevertheless very friendly. We had nice contacts. We met people, that means men. We were very open. It was very traditional, with social structures from past times, as it seems, but it was still peaceful. If you today think about all that what happened to this country in the decades later, this is sometimes unimaginable. If you see women in Afghanistan, well, we were observers, not judges, but it is very, very strange and very, very unusual when you then no longer see women because they are totally veiled. But in Afghanistan, we never had the feeling that it was somehow that we are unwanted. There were no negative attitude, and as I said, it seems to be a traditional and also peaceful and apparently a tolerant society, as many travelers have been telling. But this original country was for me, as someone who saw how these people live and work, also a kind of shock. I was frightened about the hard living conditions. How can you survive in such a dry desert-like landscape with little water, which only has to be dragged a long distances with camel caravans who have to transport things away? It was not easy getting used to these life conditions. On the other side, people in Afghanistan were not so intrusive as in Turkey. And then, at the gag, I tried to pretend that I was dying of thirst. You can see the vultures circle above me, and I crawl through the Afghan desert sands towards the saving canister with water. Yes, that was all very funny. I could not guess at that moment that the funny thing would soon come to an end. It could also be that the water I drank here comes from questionable sources. The diary never said where our drinking water really came from. In the middle of Afghanistan, on this paved road that crossed the country from east to west, I unfortunately had no photo. A London double-decker city bus came towards us. You know, those red monsters, full of hippies, all in good spirit. It turns out that there has been a kind of shuttle service between Kabul and London. Of course, it doesn't fit into this landscape. You can call that a blatant difference. Here you can see a small caravan, a man goes ahead, then come the camels, and further behind is a woman who run there. Later we come to a city. If you are in a city with children and girls, you can play around. The men were open-minded, but women actually didn't show up. And from the appearance of the people, also from their behavior, it was just a completely different country. Terrible what happened to these people in the next decades. The Russian invasion in 1979, the horrible civil war, then all the external influences, millions of refugees. We all know the incidents. We are coming to Kabul. Here we see a traveler meeting place, and look, here are the Volkswagen vans and other tourist cars. When the people arrive in Afghanistan, they also like to come here because the hashish was free. It was easy living here. That's why Afghanistan had a good reputation back then. It was an important part of the hippie trail. In this Kabul, following happened to me. I got diarrhea. We had a small place to sleep outside of the city at a small reservoir. I have to go out so often at night, and afterwards the diarrhea consisted of green water. And I lay apathetic under the car. And at some point my friend said, "Oh, our Heinz isn't fine and well. We have to do something." Suddenly I was a medical emergency. They found the address of a doctor and carted me there. He examined me and also raised his eyebrows. First I got an infusion. Good luck. There was it. He assumed that I got amoebas, parasites in my colon that don't belong there. He gave me tablets, and so he managed to get me back on my feet, because I didn't want to end like what happened to this animal. After this bad experience with the illness, soon came a kind of euphoria as we continued driving towards the Khyber Pass. The experience of the landscape, this feeling of driving that accelerates our body. Having overcome the illness, that all brought high spirits. At the top of the Khyber Pass itself, it was a bit scary. Actually, it was unreal. There were a lot of people there. They traded with all kinds of things, with hashes, with weapons, with other things. There was such an inscrutable crowd there. Afterwards, we were glad that we were gone. We could see what kind of old trucks ran up the Khyber Pass, and what was traded between the Near East and the Far East, I don't know, and I don't really want to know. In any case, we are meanwhile in Pakistan now, and the landscape in Pakistan is complete other. Pakistan is tropically humid, that means green, and then we first had to endure the muggy air. This is what our night camp looked like. And you can see also what you have probably already indicated, that the people are looking for a little distance. It is the contrary. They are endlessly curious and we never have our peace. Here is one of our female group members living in a hammock surrounded by young men. This is annoying for travelers. But to be honest, what is the situation? Yes, we drive into their country, we invade their village community, and then we are surprised and annoyed that the people even come to us. We are the intruders. We didn't reflect much on it at that time. Yes, that was one of our places to stay in Pakistan, and you can see immediately everything is green, completely different kind of environment. The agriculture is different. The people were so much different. For us, they were more modern. The women were no longer so veiled. Many people spoke English, so we felt a little bit like home. In Pakistan, we've done crazy things. We've spent some time in outdoor pools. We even visited a beer brewery. But we don't have only that nice, also bad experiences. In a hotel, some clothes were robbed. In the girls' room came some man at the night. It also turned out well, but it wasn't a nice experience. And you can see, if you do have vacation in distant countries, it is an eternal emotional up and down. We are already in India now, after passing the border of Pakistan and India. The overcame that wasn't so easy. The two countries were at war with each other in 1971. The border controls were bad and thorough and that took a whole day. In India itself, it is a lot more colorful and lively than in Pakistan. Many women who run around with a sari. Then We see overall green fields, densely populated villages, and it's been much more crowded than in the countries before. And then soon we'll be in Delhi. Here, in Old Delhi, we see it full of people. In Old Delhi, it is muddy, and what you don't see but should experience is it's noisy, it's muggy, it's stinky, it's just plain exhausting and definitely anything but relaxing. Our group has now separated in Delhi. The dispute flared up again and again, and so it was inevitable that we would go different ways. That was the consensus. One car wanted to do the long tour of southern India, the other car I was in was supposed to go straight to Nepal, because I didn't trust the car to have a long life anymore. It had so many weak points, ones like clutch, battery, starter, the alternator had broken off. Those were all the lowlights, anything but funny. But if you tell this afterwards, it might be funny. The next port of call is the Taj Mahal. As you can see, I am lying on the bench where all the VIPs of the world who ever have visited here are sitting for the proof photo. Of course, I have to have a photo there. Me in front of the Taj Mahal. I went back here 35 years later and I was laying down there like that, normally. But the character doesn't look that good anymore. But maybe it's a little bit humorous. When we drive further down the Ganges lowland, and it was really exciting there, it was an adventurous ride through the area in the Mercedes van. Here we have incoming traffic in the village, which really wasn't easy to solve. Then we had other places where we almost brushed against trucks. Then here we see a country road, which is actually just a dirt road. We had to take detour routes because the main roads were closed due to the monsoon. And then came this highlight, where we met other travelers on the street. But unfortunately, they had to tell us, we won't make it to Nepal. The streets were completely destroyed. And the street had been destroyed. A bus had sunk, the road had been underwater a week ago, everything was provisionally repaired. We tried to navigate around the damaged areas, and we did not know where we would be in the evening. But we made it. Oof. Yes, and then we are in a small town and you see scenes from a typical Indian town from 50 years ago. Almost no cars, many people, small stalls, rickshaws, cyclists and people. Ox cars, cows, which also take up traffic space. Pure India. As you may have heard in stories in the past, this is exactly what is true here. India, a permanent cause for us outsiders. In the villages, it is a bit more relaxing. You could browse deeply. In the monsoon season, the ponds have filled up. Then not only the buffaloes and the cows swam, but also the village youth. When we were here, there were always a crowd. Something like that was a highlight. It was a great experience for me. The North Indian Ganges lowland is very, very densely populated. There are 2 or 3 harvests in a year, because it is humid enough. The simplest dwelling, the simplest life, sometimes just 3 huts. Of course, I've never seen how the society is structured with the castes, but you can read about it. We've heard a lot about it. What we experience is that it is a very, very simple life. The people are very poor. Another highlight is when an elephant is standing on the road. Good luck that the vibrators work. The horn was meanwhile broken. A driver of India can imagine how bad it is, because without a horn a car does not exist. Now we had to take a detour again because of flooding. This is on the Son River, a tributary of the Ganges. I filmed the scene of women washing here. One should always take a boat, women. Of course, they have a hard life in India and a very bad image. But that's another chapter. Especially in the country, they are very heavily burdened by housework, fieldwork and the children. But what really goes on in the families every day, of course, we as normal travelers don't notice this at all. Yes, this is typical North India with the rice cultivation, and this typical North India. It was exactly like in my geography book at school 5 years ago. Rice fields, work with a hooked plough pulled by oxen. It was so special for me, I didn't think I'd actually get to see it. And what I dreamed of at school, I really experienced it here in Northern India. Here you see the farmer with his thin legs, who is definitely not well fed, a hard life. in my life, how uncritical I was then. As a wealthy Western European, I only perceive the exotic. We come to the next highlight, formerly called Benares, now Varanasi. The city is completely full, and then sometimes a million pilgrims come along, everything is even fuller. The streets are narrow and it's so dirty, the holy city. Then you can also see priests walking around, people who play such a big role in Hinduism. You also see people traveling there, like this man here, this man. He trained himself physically for hours, very impressive. We also saw corpses being carried in the streets to cremation sites, which we could also see there. Filming was forbidden there, and that was a good thing. We finally went to the staircase, the gates of the Ganges. Because the Ganges is a holy river, the water is good and holy, and it purifies itself. That is the reading. That's why people go in there, bath there, pray, do rituals, let water run through their hands. You can really see how deeply impressed they are and how much strength they draw from being here on the Ganges. Then we rented a boat. You can watch the action very well from the water side, seen boats from the boat or up to close. One cannot help but be amazed. It is equally fascinating and irritating. Varanasi is one of the holiest sites in the world. I think it's one of the most incomprehensible. It's really deeply contradictory, in my opinion, that an outsider can even understand it. We then had to share the narrow streets with the cows, traders and people from all parts of India. It was really very close, very exciting, really very, very exciting. It was monsoon season, so the Ganges had a lot of water. The steps were flooded up to very high. In winter, probably it's different. But this brings us to the end of our time in India. From now on, we continued on the roads that are passable, and so we finally came back to the border of Nepal. Then we entered Nepal, and everything is so different. First, we are in a mountain range, but in a green mountain range. Everything was brown and yellow in Turkey and Afghanistan, but here everything is green. Rice terraces. But not only that, the people are different too. Somehow it's more relaxed, somehow gentler. So we meander up the road, the only road that connects Kathmandu to India. There were hardly any roads in Nepal. All goods entering to interior of Nepal also take this road, unless goods are carried by humans. So our Mercedes diesel has to work very hard. And this side that made our hearts beat faster, because it was so beautiful, the mountains with the rivers and valleys, and we felt like at home. It was much more relaxed than the bustling India. We found a nice picnic spot. A couple of kids played with us, but not so intrusive. Tea was brought to us from a nearby hut. We've been playing around with the kids. We made a campfire in the evening. We probably also smoked hashish. That was quite common, especially in Afghanistan and then in Nepal. I splashed around in the water with the boys. It was just really relaxed. Plus that nice feeling. Wow, we are in Nepal. We actually arrived at our destination. Health was okay, the car played along. That was one reason for a correct mood. But that shouldn't hide the fact that life is very, very hard for people in Nepal. There is a lot of physically demanding work out there here, like you can see here. As I said, there is hardly no roads, almost only paths in the mountains, and it all has to be done by hand. It is very, very tough existence. Which, in its stark contrast to the fact that as Europeans, as travelers, we just came here and casually look at it and feel good about it and find the whole thing nice. The contrast is extreme, and I have already said that we didn't think much about that. Whether it's crushing rice, whether it's working on rice terraces, whether it's building roads, whether it's transporting things there, it's just really, really hard work, and that really humbled us a bit. After more than 12,000 kilometers, the postal parcel truck has really brought us to the capital of Nepal, Kathmandu. We arrive in a city with a lot of religiosity because we see temples everywhere. Buddhism comes along with Hinduism. I can repeat it again. Everything has an extremely gentle atmosphere, a calming effect. The way people treat each other, the unusual musical sound, the prayer wheels, all these things left a big impression and are one of the reasons why Nepal has such a reputation as a popular travel destination. Without forgetting how stark the contrast is between us, visitors and admirers of these magnificent temples, just like this one, the Bodhnath Stupa, and all the others, and then the religious festivities and devotion one encounters. And then you see again how difficult the life is, because, as I said, everything is dragged on the back with a band across the forehead, even by children. Whether it's firewood or building materials, everything has to be carried over the mountain to the villages, and that's pretty shocking. The opposite of that is a hardware store on the famous Freak Street, an area with everything for us travelers, a great neighborhood with cheap accommodation, cheap food, drugs, bars, dim pop music, but still an island of spoiled Western middle class youth in traditional Nepal. However, my old diary rates about how I enjoyed it. The real highlight was that we arrived in the middle of the festival week. It was the festival of the living goddess, a girl we see here, a girl who is destined to be a goddess and then ceases to be a goddess when menstruation begins. But in time she is scared, highly revered. Even the king comes over, has her bless him, and kissed her feet. And I was lucky that she was suddenly in front of me. Otherwise this photo would not have been taken. Wow, I saw the living goddess. I'd be lucky all my life. But unfortunately, I didn't kiss her feet. It was actually the most beautiful experience of the festival. How excited I was. It was a very special highlight because otherwise we only saw everyday life, and now a festival like this big festival of the living goddess, supported by a lot of street theater and drama. There was masked dances, but also comedy. It brought a lot of exuberance to the people. The living goddess then was pulled through the city in a huge chariot. I felt a little reminded of Carnival, but that doesn't do the festival justice. She should never touch the ground with her feet, and was therefore always worn. Many men pulled this big wooden wagon with thick ropes. It was great fun, and yet there was something contemplative about it. In any case, I was thrilled that I was able to experience something so great. Calmer times came. We borrowed a bicycle. Our car has been successfully sold, meanwhile. How nice it is to ride a bike through Kathmandu or the surrounding area. You get a completely different view of the life of the people, of the landscape. We cycled through the neighboring cities of Patan and Bhaktapur, admiring their temples and just enjoying cycling through the green valley and marveling at the rice terraces. Nepal has impressed me as the most beautiful country on the trip. But the most exciting experience of the trip was also the worst. Namely, we came up with the idea of driving through the Himalaya on motorcycles to the Chinese border. My previous motorcycle driving experience, I drove 20 minutes in the driving school, and for my driving license 2 years ago I drove less than 10 minutes. That was it. And now I wanted to cross unpaved passes with 2 people on this motorcycle. We are young, we can do anything, it will work out. Of course, it didn't work out. Also, I did, otherwise I would not be here. We rode with 4 motorcycles, 8 people, and the rear wheel of the first bike was soon flat. After a few hours, my friend's engine broke down. The third machine had pulled up, so that we drove alone toward China. At first, I'm still grinning as you can see. But at the furthest point, right at the border, our rear tire burst, a catastrophe. Then I drove completely crazy the first 40 kilometers back to the next workshop, only on the rim, over gravel roads and passes. 100% stress for us. There was a lot of trouble afterwards because of the broken rim. We had to pay a lot. Looking back, it was the most extreme experience we had here. Here you can see Heinz Wippen again, who made the journey of his life at the age of 20. But you still have to add critical thoughts, because the trips of the hippies were already very selfish back again. Many felt perhaps even superior to the people and the cultures. Disrespect often went hand in hand with arrogance. Both things have changed completely for me in the following years.